Children and adolescents are not just small adults. Their bodies, particularly their immune systems and gut microbiomes, are still under construction. During these early life stages, the gut-immune interface is undergoing critical development that lays the foundation for lifelong health. It's during this window that diet plays an outsized role, shaping not just immediate physiology, but immune programming, microbiota composition, and even brain development. When high-fat, low-fiber diets dominate during this sensitive period, the damage doesn't just cause short-term disruption, it can set trajectories that lead to chronic disease decades later. One major reason for this heightened vulnerability is that the gut barrier and immune system are still maturing throughout childhood and adolescence. The epithelial lining, mucus production, and the regulation of tight junctions are not as stable or resilient as they are in adults. This means that dietary insults, especially repeated exposures to saturated fats, processed oils, and ultra-processed junk food, can have a more exaggerated and prolonged impact on barrier function. Children are more likely to experience increased intestinal permeability, which allows bacterial fragments like LPS to leak into circulation, activating systemic inflammation more readily than in fully matured adults. Their immune system, particularly the mucosal immune response, is also still calibrating. During childhood, immune cells like innate lymphoid cells, ILC3S, which play a central role in gut homeostasis, are learning how to tolerate beneficial microbes and respond to threats without overreacting. High-fat diets during this time can disrupt that calibration. Lipid overload has been shown to impair IL-22 production from ILC3S, a key molecule for maintaining epithelial integrity and microbial balance. Once suppressed during a critical window of development, IL-22 signaling may not fully rebound, leaving the gut more susceptible to dysbiosis and inflammation for years to come. Meanwhile, the gut microbiome itself is still assembling. It's a dynamic, highly plastic ecosystem in early life, one that's especially sensitive to dietary inputs. A fiber-rich, diverse diet supports the growth of beneficial strains like bifidobacteria, which play a foundational role in immune education and metabolic regulation. But a high-fat, low-fiber diet can derail this process, reducing microbial diversity and selecting for more inflammatory species. Studies have shown that children raised on Western-style diets develop microbiomes with lower resilience and a higher abundance of endotoxin-producing bacteria. Once these microbial patterns are established, they become much harder to reverse in adulthood. The consequences of this early disruption extend well beyond the gut. Because children's bodies are still developing, systemic inflammation can have ripple effects across other organ systems. Metabolic programming is particularly sensitive, meaning that chronic low-grade inflammation caused by poor diet can predispose children to insulin resistance, fatty liver disease, and obesity even before puberty. The brain is also highly vulnerable. The gut-brain axis is especially active during early development, and inflammatory signals from the gut can impair neurotransmitter production, disrupt synaptic pruning, and alter stress reactivity. It's no surprise that childhood diets high in fat and sugar have been linked to greater risk of depression, anxiety, and cognitive deficits later in life. To make matters worse, children lack the metabolic buffering capacity of adults. They have fewer reserves to absorb dietary abuse without consequence, and their inflammatory thresholds are lower. A few days of high-fat intake might not leave lasting scars in a 40-year-old, but in a 10-year-old with a developing immune system and immature microbiome, the same exposure can produce a disproportionate impact and create a new normal baseline of inflammation. The behavioral component deepens the danger. Dietary habits formed during childhood tend to stick. A preference for hyperpalatable, high-fat, ultra-processed foods creates neural reward patterns that are hard to unlearn. These foods hijack dopamine pathways, reinforcing craving and normalizing overconsumption. By the time adolescence hits, with its own hormonal and metabolic upheavals, the groundwork for chronic inflammation, dysbiosis, and metabolic dysfunction may already be firmly in place. In short, children and adolescents live in bodies that are far more impressionable than adult physiology. Every high-fat, nutrient-poor meal doesn't just create a temporary inflammatory ripple, it shapes immune learning, metabolic set points, and microbial composition in ways that can echo for decades. That slice of pizza or sugary milkshake might seem like a harmless indulgence in the moment, but for a developing gut, it can become part of a long, invisible detour into chronic illness. When we talk about protecting future health, it starts with protecting the gut, especially while it's still learning how to function.